let's start with you, Molly. I thought it was super impactful to create a world in which an afterlife exists to explore mental health. Can you talk me through that choice?
I wish it was like a very intelligent, thoughtful choice, but the truth of the matter was I was dealing with numerous deaths in my life and I couldn't handle it. I wasn't in a place where I was like, this is what happens. And I'm not a religious person. And I looked into religion and I looked into a lot of other things and none of it really made sense. And oddly, this is the thing that made the most sense to me. And so I wanted to have the conversation in which I actually understood what happens after death. And I wanted to create a world which made the most sense to me. And this is kind of what logically I got led to. But for me, it was always about these characters and having the conversation between the two. So, and it's kind of why there's a big world premise that kind of sets us off. But for me, it's always about the human choices and how we handle them that I was interested in exploring.
Absolutely. Katie and Rahul, how do both of your characters, Rose and Teddy's choice to be honest with each other, ultimately help them to be honest with themselves, which begins sort of this path toward healing?
Do you want to go first?
I'm not a morning person. That's a really intense, thoughtful question to kick off the thing with.
Have another sip of coffee and I
got mine right.
Yeah. Have another sip.
Cheers.
I mean, I think sometimes in life we meet people that trigger us in all the right ways. That can be really infuriating, but if you switch your mind a little bit, it can be the path to healing. I think Teddy is really strong where Rose is weak and vice versa. And I think their compassion for each other's pain was like a vessel for healing for them.
Yeah, and I also feel like what was kind of lightning in a bottle was that I think Katie and I's approach to the work was very different, but complemented each other and kind of reflected the Teddy Rose vibe. So it was kind of happening off camera and on camera in its own sort of way.
Totally.
Which was kind of cool.
Yeah, I was doing my makeup this morning. Actually, I was thinking about this. We were outside one of the many motels we shot at, and I was like really frustrated and like insecure, down on myself. And Rahul was like, "Do you like this? Like, do you actually like doing this?" Like a real, just honest, non-judgmental, but just a question. Mm-hmm. And it really like kind of took me off guard, because I was in such a zone of like complaining and being in like the narcissistic mind of like, it's all happening to me and not for me. Mm. And just piggybacking off of what Rahul said of like our processes were so different, but like that question like made me kind of rise higher and be like, and get my shit together a bit and be like, no, yeah, I do love this. And like, bring it, like, you're okay. He's got your back. And I think that kind of bled into our relationship on screen too.
That's so interesting, because I can picture Teddy saying that to Rose. In a sense. Especially in the beginning, that's so interesting. And it really, not to get super personal, but it reminds me of my relationship with my husband in a lot of ways, like this idea of sort of gifting each other with different perspectives in a sense. And it is a lot about just shifting perspectives a lot of time and being inside ourselves so much, not being able to recognize that there are different perspectives and paths in front of us, and helping each other see that. And choosing to see that, I think too, like these characters go through this beautiful development of like choosing to start opening up and healing. Yeah, so good. There's a beautiful quote in the film that I've been repeating to other people constantly since I've seen it. Rose says to her sister, "He told me his truth, and I told him the worst thing about me, and it was okay." What a poetic and perfect way to describe love. Molly, when developing Rose, how important was it for her to understand that self-acceptance is sort of directly correlated and connected to accepting love?
Well, I mean, for me, this is really a self-love story. It's funny because we can argue about this, but some people are calling it a romance, and I don't know that I would agree with that. But we can talk about that later. For me, it's a self-love story about, and you can't love anybody and you can't make any good choices. And if Rose and Teddy are together later, man, do they need a lot of therapy, and they got a lot of work to do because there's a lot of stuff. But for me, the whole thing was Rose. I have been in the past, both of these are different sides, I feel, of my psyche. One is kind of how I think people see me, and one is kind of how I feel. Rose is more how I feel most of the time. And for me, I fucked up a lot of my life. I made a lot of bad choices and I did a lot of things. And the most important thing was realizing it was me and taking on that responsibility, which I just feel like is kind of surviving your 20s and something that a lot of us go through from 20s into 30s and now getting into the next one. But for me, that was always imperative for Rose to understand that it is actually her journey. It is her story. It is her choice at the end of it. And for me, that's what this whole thing does. And finally, somebody who, in some ways, Rose is somewhat abrasive, I would say, at the start. And somebody else comes up to her and says, I don't really care about that. I care about more things and I want to go on this journey with you. Mm-hmm. And for her to actually accept that is a huge thing. So for me, that was very much the arc of Rose that I very much enjoyed exploring.
Yeah, I very much related to that. And I think that whether, like you said, whether these characters stay together or not, whether it's about romantic love, platonic love, love for yourself, it's like that is the center of it. It's like her going on that journey. And it was beautiful. I have to wrap. I have like 20 more questions, but I just want to say thank you so much for creating such beautiful art. And I can't wait to share it with the world and all of that. So congratulations. Thank you.